Hello, everyone. How are you all? Happy Monday. Happy start of a new week. Today, I wanted to talk about that idea of work-life balance because I think with the pandemic, a lot of people were working from home, maybe now finding that they're just going back to work. It's just kind of been a different time for people's work lives, I feel. So I wanted to talk about that idea of work-life balance. I don't really believe in the idea of balance, to be honest. I don't think we can ever have this just like perfectly balanced um, thing in our lives. I just don't think that that's ever going to be the case. There is always going to be something that is, taking over a little bit more of our lives. Sometimes that's work if you've got like a particular project that's going on and you've got a deadline or something. Other times, maybe like during the pandemic, your kind of life took over and that's all that you were doing because you were maybe out of work or whatever. Sometimes, like your kids will take over and it will be all about them. Maybe you get sick and again, it's all about you. I don't think there is ever any balance. Nothing will ever be perfectly balanced in your life. To me, I prefer to think of it more like a seesaw where like one part of your life is just particularly busy and everything else has to take a back seat for a little bit, but eventually it will come back around and start to right itself, and then something else will take over. And that's kind of how I like to see it, because I think if we're always focused on balance and getting everything perfectly balanced, we're always going to be frustrated, because that's just not a realistic way to look at life. There has to be a little bit of give and take, and you have to allow for the fact that sometimes one period in your life just will be particularly busy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Um, as I talk about this journey, my hay fever is so bad at the minute that my nose is actually raw from like blowing it all the time. But anyway, I will get back to like comments and questions at the end of this rant. So yeah, I don't think that anybody has a work-life balance problem. But let's kind of look at the ways that you can maybe kind of rectify if one of the areas of your life is out of balance or has been out of balance for a long time. Because again, it should be about that give and take over time. And if you're like this for a very long time, then obviously something is wrong. And I want to talk about that idea of, first of all, let's start with the work side of things. Work is kind of like laundry in the sense that it is never ending. Like you can put in a full day's work, work late, work overtime, stay up late, work through the night. And when you wake up the following morning, there is still going to be work to do. That's just the way it is. And I don't say that to like bum you out or anything. I'm not saying that in a like sort of way, but just so that you realize that you don't have to work as hard as you think. Like the work will always be there. Something will always be there waiting for you. And no matter how much effort you put in, there's still going to be more work at the end of it. So I wanted to share a story from my life years and years ago when I worked in retail. It was such a pivotal moment for me. It was one of those big, like, eye-opening moments where I realized, wow, this is not what I want for my life. So I worked in retail. I was very good at my job, very detail oriented, very ambitious, got on really well with everyone, really loved the job. I really enjoyed it. And so I looked after like one particular department in the store. And then there was another department that was very, very similar to mine, and no one really looked after it properly. Like there wasn't somebody assigned to it. It was kind of like just random people went in and fixed it up whenever it needed it. So my manager asked me to take on the job of sorting out that department. So now I have my own department, which is the second busiest in the store. Plus, I have this extra department that needed a whole bunch of work because nobody had been officially assigned to it. So now I'm going along, I'm working essentially two jobs, okay? Still enjoying it, still really, finding it challenging, obviously, but really enjoying the challenge. So that goes on for a while, doing a really good job. Then another girl who worked in the store in a completely different department, she left. She worked full time. And instead of, hiring someone to replace her, they asked me if I would do her job. Now, again, like I said, this girl worked full time. I'm already working full time with my job. I've taken on another department, which is another full time job, and now they want me to do this job of another person. And I said yes, because again, I was really ambitious, really liked the job, really wanted to learn more about the store and about how everything worked. And she kind of worked down in the offices, so like a completely different role than I was used to. So took it on. Really like dug into it again, really enjoyed it, learned a lot. So now I'm basically doing three jobs, right? And I should say that at this time, I was working full time. I was also studying. I was doing my law degree at the time. So the law degree that I chose was like an evening. Um, you could do it in the evening because they realized that a lot of people would have to work to pay for it. So they did offer like an evening option. So I was working all day and then going to college all evening. Um, so this is the situation that I'm in. Then it comes up to like my normal routine, like performance review. I'm called in, sitting down with my manager, who I get on really well with, um, and it's going great. He's like, "We're really happy with your work." And at this stage of my job, managers from other stores were coming in, seeing the work that I was doing, and offering me jobs, like basically trying to poach me. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was actually on the verge of being promoted to management level, now like low management level. But I didn't realize that at the time. But anyway, this is just to kind of paint the picture. I was doing a good job. I was doing the job of like several people. I get called in. My manager's like, "You're doing great. Really happy with how everything is going." And I'm sitting there thinking, "This is great. Everything is wonderful." And then he wraps up by saying, and these are the words that he actually said, "Maybe we can try and up the pace." And that was the moment. In that like split second, I knew that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many jobs I took on, like no matter how good I was, it was never going to be enough. There was always, and I'm sure he just said it in a sense that when you call someone in for a performance review, you kind of always have to give them some areas to improve in. I think that was kind of, I don't think he did it from like a bad place or anything. Like I said, I got on really well with him. But it was just at that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, it was never going to be enough. So did I pick up the pace? No. No, I did not. I was working like basically, I was doing the job of three people and, trying to get a law degree at the time. Working all day, going to college all night. I started work at like 8 in the morning. I finished college at, I think it was 9:45 at night. So basically 14 hours of my day, like most days, like Monday to Friday. So that's when I realized, and I hope this story maybe was kind of like illustrative for you, that no matter how hard you work, there's just always going to be something more to be done. So you don't, and I'm not saying like don't be ambitious. I'm not saying don't go in and like challenge yourself and enjoy your job and, do your best work, but don't kill yourself, because you only end up putting more pressure on yourself to kind of keep performing at that level. And the more pressure you put on yourself and the more you do, the more others will expect you to do. So I hope that's helpful in terms of like the work aspect of things. Like, still do a good job and still enjoy your job. But if you're getting to the stage where, like you feel that you can't clock off at a certain time, like there is no boundary between your work life and your home life, that's when you need to start asking questions and looking and seeing, do I really need to be doing all this? Do I need to be putting in the overtime? if all of this is just going to be waiting for me. There's just going to be more work waiting for me. And the more work that I do, the more work I'll be expected to do. So I hope that was kind of helpful on the work side of things. I know there are times when, you've got a deadline coming up or something and you just have to put in extra hours and everyone's working flat out, or it's a particularly busy season like Christmas or whatever, depending on what industry you're in. I know there are times like that. But if that seems to be a constant for you, like if there are just constant deadlines one after another, then you really need to reassess. So I hope that story kind of helps, because I know it was a big eye opener for me. That was the moment that I realized I was not going to kill myself. I was already doing a good job. I was not going to kill myself doing more and more and more and more and more. So let's look at the life side. Let's move on from the work thing. In terms of life, the reason I don't think anyone has like a work-life balance problem, apart from like the seesaw thing that I've already outlined, is that it's not really life that's the problem, because cooking and cleaning are life. Grocery shopping is part of life. Looking after your kids, part of life. The actual issue there is not life, because there's plenty of that to be doing. The real issue is that you're not enjoying life. You're not doing things that you actually enjoy. And I have been there, because I worked, long hours and was studying long hours. And then by the time I got home, like I just switched off. And that is what I needed to do, at the time. But I also then carried that into my weekends. And my life just became this blur of like work, sleep, TV. And I realized that it wasn't actually about the fact really that I didn't have enough time off. It was that I was doing nothing with the time off that I had. I wasn't enjoying it. I was slipping into like mindless habits, switching on the TV, whatever, and just not, or like scrolling through like gossip websites and blogs and stuff. And that was my weekend. I wasn't actually doing anything to like fill up my cup. I wasn't doing anything to recharge my batteries. And I think that's the big problem when it comes to the life side of things. It's not that, there isn't enough life in your life. It's that you're not actually using some of that time to recharge your batteries and do something that you absolutely love and enjoy doing. So I think that's why I kind of always disagree with this whole idea of a work-life balance, because it suggests, first of all, that there can be a balance. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think you can ever have anything in perfect balance. And also, I think the reason a lot of us feel that work takes over is because, number one, we allow it to take over. We don't set those boundaries for ourselves, and we keep thinking that we need to do more, when in reality, that's not the case. And with the life that we do have, we're not using it to its full potential. We're not actually living, like fully living, fully recharging and rejuvenating and doing things that we love. And instead, we're just completely switching off, which again, we do need to do. Like, you do need to switch off and recharge your batteries. But then we're engaging in a lot of like mindless, useless activities that don't actually add any value to our lives and don't recharge our batteries and don't fill our spirits and our souls. So that's why we end up feeling like work is taking over, because we're not actually doing anything with the life that we do have. So let me just go back through and I can answer comments and questions. I hope that was clear, but I've kind of been thinking about that a lot recently, because of, a lot of people maybe were off work during the pandemic, or were working from home, or just finding themselves in kind of unusual working circumstances, and are now starting to change back into like the old way of doing things or whatever. And, they're finding everything is totally out of whack because they're just not used to it and they're not back into that routine. So that's just something to consider as you are maybe hopefully going back into your work routine, or getting a little bit more of your life back. Dawn says she was just reading my Monday morning minute. Yeah, it's my 1 minute Monday email when my live video notification popped up. If you don't know, every Monday I send out an email, like a newsletter, goes out first thing Monday morning. Well, it's first thing Monday morning for me, may not be wherever you are in the world. And it's just like a quick ish, easy read that you can like go through in about a minute. And it's to give you inspiration to set you up for the week. It's like food for thought, a little bit of motivation, something like that. It's basically a blog post that gets sent, a short-ish blog post that gets sent to your inbox every Monday. So if you're interested in that, I've been getting such great feedback. I've been doing it for a year now. It's been a year because I started at June of last year. I get such great feedback on it. But howtogist.com/subscribe. So howtogyst.com/subscribe will take you to the page where you can just put in your email address, and that will add you to the list. Let me see. In the Garden of the Blessing says that's when burnout happens. Yeah, exactly. Like when we put all this pressure on ourselves to keep increasing the work aspect of our lives, and we're not putting any pressure on ourselves to increase or improve the life aspect of our lives, that's when trouble occurs. Like people used to always ask me how I managed to, because there was a time when I was working 7 days a week. People are asking me how I didn't burn out. And the reason was because I was fully recharging my batteries. Like in my downtime, I was fully, properly resting. And then I was doing something that I really loved to do. So I was writing a lot at the time. And that was really like something that just kind of topped up my soul. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Try and instead of like trying to climb the corporate ladder, try and climb the life ladder where you're like leveling up your life rather than just like rung after rung of work. Let me see. Hello, everyone. Thank you for all the lovely messages, for everyone who's saying hello. I do see them all. Hubsty Falls, gosh, you are so right. Try telling my husband that. Let me see. Priscilla Gonzalez. Oh, no, sorry, Gonzalva. What are activities that you think are less mindless or do being joy or something positive? Do bring joy, sorry, or something positive that you recommend? It's really individual for each person. Sometimes I give the example of watching TV as kind of being a mindless thing, and that's not always the case. There have been studies that have said that the average American person watches about 5 hours of TV a day. That is probably, if you're doing 5 hours of TV watching, and again, you could be genuinely enjoying it, and that's great. But I think a lot of us watch TV to switch off, and we're not really conscious of it. We're not really conscious of how it makes us feel. If you were sitting down for 5 hours and staring at a screen, how do you feel afterwards? Like, do you feel excited and happy and like that was time well spent or not? I think for most people, not all people, I think for most people, 5 hours of TV every day is probably too much if we're not really getting anything out of it except that complete switch off that we need. So it's really individual for each person. Like, find what you love to do. Like, what is something that you do that you feel really good about doing? Like for me, it's reading and writing. Every time I do those, I feel like I'm completely relaxed, like I'm completely enjoying myself. So TV isn't necessarily a bad thing. Scrolling online isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just be conscious of how it actually makes you feel. Like, do you feel recharged and rejuvenated after you do it, or do you just feel bleh? So yeah, it's a really personal thing. So I know that wasn't incredibly helpful, but everyone is so different and everyone likes different things. But notice how you feel after you do things. Like, what are the things where when you're doing them, you're like, yes, this was really enjoyable. I wish I could do this more often. Ballerina, I like to think I've got a good work-life balance. I work part-time, which gives me plenty of time to recharge and do all the things that I enjoy. It's taken me years to work out the right balance. Yeah, and that balance will be different for everyone. Like I said, I used to work 7 days and still be fine. Now, I was younger at the time. I did have naturally more energy and stuff, but it really just depends on whether you're enjoying what you're doing. and whether you are properly resting when you can. Like I was properly resting in my lunch hour, I was properly resting. It's like I could never understand these people who would use their lunch hour to go out shopping or exercising or like to go do something. And again, it's because I worked 7 days. Like my lunch hour was rest, and that was it. Um, so yeah, let me see. Laura says, at the beginning of self isolation, I went a little overboard with the self care. Now that the pace of life is ramping up again, I need to go back to recharging those batteries regularly. Yeah, that's that whole idea of like this pandemic has probably thrown a lot of us out of balance completely, like where one aspect is like has just way overtaken another. So and now we're finding like we're switching back. And like I said, it's about that seesaw. But I think this was just a kind of an extreme one. But as long as we are kind of getting back on track a little bit. Let me see. Elizabeth says, I'm so glad you're covering this topic from your perspective. I really think the work-life balance is hard to maintain. Absolutely. Since there's always a minor crisis at work. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like there's always going to be some deadline or something. There's always going to be more work to do. And that's okay as long as you are at some point balancing that out. Like taking extra rest, extra breaks, doing something outside of work that really lights you up. And again, those times, like those deadlines, those busy seasons, we all have them. But it's the fact that they are seasons and not like a constant state of being. So yeah, but that story with my boss, like that was the moment that I realized that I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to just continue to work more and more and more. Like when clocking off time came, I was out of there. Like that was it. Now I had to go to college, but I didn't. I would say there are like a handful of days where I stayed a little bit late. And when I say a little bit late, I mean like a few minutes late just to finish off something that I was doing. I was in the middle of something. But yeah, that meeting that I had was just, that was one of those moments, those moments that like changes your life, completely changes your perspective on things. Mackenzie and Jason, so happy to catch this one, Laura. Your videos are incredibly helpful during the stressful time, and binge watching will continue to keep myself sane. Oh, thank you. That's so lovely. Thank you very much. I really do try and keep the videos as practical and helpful as I can. So I always love hearing that somebody does find them actually beneficial and they do get something out of them. L. Henry, difficulties with watching lives. Get it? And ordering more stuff. I want off this miserable merry-go-round, trying desperately to get organized. Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to, first of all, the fact that you recognize that is one of the biggest steps, because I think, like with the TV thing, sometimes we just kind of get into this mindless routine of doing it and not even realizing it just becomes our default. So the fact that you've actually realized that there is a problem and you know what that problem is, that's a big, big step. Ordering more stuff. I think for this pandemic, it has either gone one of two ways for people. You either like bought all of the things, because you couldn't go to the store, you were probably online shopping a lot, or you like stopped buying things pretty much completely. I pretty much stopped buying things completely. We've saved so much money. But definitely the ordering more stuff thing, I can see how easy it would be to get into that. I think one of the things you have to do is something that I do is I just leave things in my cart. Like I still get the kind of buyer's high, I think, of like window shopping online, scrolling and adding things to my cart, but then just not actually making the purchase. So sometimes that gives me that little, the same kind of feeling without actually spending money and getting all the stuff to my house. So that may be something that helps you, just adding things to your cart. Then that's it. Sometimes also like setting a reminder or something on your phone of, if you find that you are, we'll say on a particular website, setting a reminder on your phone for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, so that when it goes off, that you've already spent enough time there and it's time to go to do something else. And then I also find that decluttering is a great way. Every time I declutter or try and like clean up, organize something, I realize how much I already have. That's as soon as I do that, I'm like, that's it. I'm never buying another notebook or pen or whatever it is ever again. Um, Sometimes that's temporary, but in the moment, it can really help. When I pull everything out, I'm like, wow, I definitely do not need another notebook. So hopefully those help. Um, Natasha Mason says, always thought I wanted to work full time. Then it happened and I changed my mind. Now I work part time and think I have things balanced now. Yeah, I think again, there is that idea in society where you have to do something, like you have to go to college and you have to get yourself a full time job and you have to climb the ladder and you always have to be ambitious and wanting more and working harder so that you can get to a stage where you can go back to like not working and actually enjoying your life, at retirement. It just doesn't make sense to me. Um, why not get now? And I know obviously bills have to be paid and stuff, but why not try and get some of that retirement life, that thing that you're working towards? Why not try and incorporate some of that now? That's kind of always the way I feel. First of all, I don't know if I will get there. Like nobody knows what the future holds, and when I do get there, I don't know if I will be in any fit state to actually enjoy it. um, Maybe I'll be ill, maybe a family member will be ill. um, None of us can say what the future holds, so why not have some of what we're working towards now, um, if that makes sense. Let me see. Dazzle Dust, I'm quite happy to slide down the career ladder rather than climb up. My mental health is more important than being a high flyer at work. Absolutely. And that's kind of like what I was saying with that meeting that I had with my boss. I just realized that no matter how hard I worked, there was just always going to be more. There was always going to be more work to be done. And at that stage, I valued actually enjoying the job more than I valued just working harder, and working more, working faster. I just, like, listen, I'm a great employee. And I've got out of that, you know, employer um, life now. I'm self-employed, work for myself, and have done that for many, many years now. And I'm very happy to do that. And that's something that suits me. It doesn't suit everyone. But um, yeah, I back then when that meeting happened, I realized that that wasn't for me. I just realized that no matter how good you were at your job, like this was never going to be enough for anybody. Um, so yeah, let me see. Let me just scroll back here and see if I can catch the last few messages. Halsey Falls, that's a really good point. Watching the quantity of time you spend on an activity and effect, if it makes you feel good or not. Yeah, absolutely. I think we can always, um, it's easy to kind of fall into a default. Like when you start doing something, it's easy to just sit there and continue, particularly if it's something like TV or like scrolling. It's just easier to sit there and just let it happen than it is to actually go do something. But afterwards, you, generally, you don't feel good about it. Again, there are situations, like there are plenty of times when I've sat down and like maybe, watched a really long film. Sam and I are rewatching the Lord of the Rings films, and they're like, we're watching the director's cut, and they're like 4 hours long. But we're enjoying them, we're really liking them, and that's quality time together. So it's definitely not the case that like sitting down watching TV or watching a movie or something is inherently bad. Absolutely not. But it's about how often you're doing it, for how long you're doing it, what things are you not doing that you would prefer to do, and how it makes you feel. Because for me, sitting down and watching TV all day does not make me feel rested and relaxed, which is why we do it, right? It's why we all sit down and switch on the TVs, because we want to relax and kind of like switch off. But for me, that's never how I feel after watching hours and hours of TV. I never feel recharged and rejuvenated. Um, so yeah, it's just being mindful of how you feel when you're doing something. Um, she's also saying, I struggle with Instagram. I feel like it's something I numb myself with in a bad way and have considered stop using it. But yet I love moments like this, but feel guilty that I can't give my attention to everyone's account. Yeah, something. So I actually just yesterday deleted the Twitter app off my phone, also TikTok. Deleted both of them. Didn't really spend that much time on either of them, but did find that there were times when I would just get sucked in and like just keep scrolling. So I just deleted both of those. I kept Facebook purely because of work, like my Facebook page. I like to go in. If I open the Facebook app, I go straight to notifications, and then I just reply to comments and things. I don't scroll through the timeline. Instagram, I still allow myself. That's still my one platform, but I have set up a time limit now so that I don't spend more than an hour and a half on Instagram for the whole day. And that's, to me, is still a lot of time. Um, but I was kind of looking at the average amount of time I was spending, and it was on Instagram, and it was over an hour and a half, like probably about 2 hours a day. So I capped it at an hour and a half, and now the app will just shut down after an hour and a half. So that can be something like setting up something like that, or setting a timer. It's actually coming up. It's not this week's video, but next week's video. It's something I mentioned in that as well, because next week's video is all about like time wasters, things that you can stop doing to recoup some of your time. And that's one of the things I mentioned, setting up those time limits, or setting a timer to go off, so that it will just be, because it's so easy to just switch off and not even realize how much time is passing. So once you have that reminder, like your screen shuts down or a timer goes off or something that just kind of brings you back to reality. Let me see. Ellie says, nice seeing Laura, miss these streams. Welcome back, Ellie. And also she said, realizing it's a problem is the first step. Yeah, definitely. Donna says, yes, leaving things in cart works well. Also creating wish lists. Yeah, that's a really good one as well. Just like saying, because I do that all the time, just like heart things like, ooh, yeah, heart, or add to wish list, or whatever, depending on whatever retailer you're using. Ellie says, also thinking about the purchase for 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, that's why I find just putting things in my cart, and then generally I never go back to it. That's or by the time I do, like, stuff is sold out, I'm like, meh. Let me see. Hobbsy Falls, yes, I'm struggling with how the corporate ladder works and how it really doesn't work with my values and mental health, feeling kind of lost. Yeah, again, we're kind of like, we've been programmed basically to do that whole like climb the corporate ladder. Do you know that story? I read it a few times now, but it's about the guy who was like a fisherman, and he went out on his little boat every day and had a nice kind of lazy day, caught some fish, brought them home to his family. And then a businessman came along and was like, you should buy another boat and catch more fish and then sell the fish. And the guy was kind of like, why would I do that? And the businessman was like, so, you can build this really big business, make lots of money. You can have like a whole fleet of boats and ships and things. And the guy was like, yeah, but what's the point? And the businessman said, so at the end, you can sell your business or sell your ship or whatever, sell your fleet, and then retire. And you can just sit around fishing all day for pleasure. Like, it's one of those things, like, we work so hard to basically get back to where we were at the beginning. Just doesn't make sense to me. But that story, every time I read it, I'm just like so amused by it, because it's so spot on. Let me see. Ellie, yes, your messages are getting through. Let me see. Ellie doesn't have a Facebook app, only Messenger. Yeah, the only reason I have Facebook right now is, like I said, notifications, just so I can respond to comments and stuff. But I am considering deleting it and just going on for a few minutes on my laptop every day. Obviously, Falls, okay, I'll try the timer idea with Instagram. That sounds really helpful. Works for me. Seneca, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that super chat. Yay! I only have a little to give, but wanted to show my appreciation. Thanks for sharing your time and wisdom. That is so appreciated. I can't even tell you how much that means to me. I've worked so hard to build this business up. I worked so many years doing that thing, like being in that cycle of working all day, studying all night, then working 7 days, trying to get my career off the ground. Just basically working myself into the ground. And then, my daughter came along, and with it, depression, and just being in a horrible, horrible place. And it just made me reevaluate everything. And then trying to get this business off the ground, and like not wanting any other woman to feel as crap as I felt. And then, like just trying to register the business over here. That was such a long struggle. Like, we've lived here almost 3 years now, and it's only recently that I've been able to register the business and now actually officially, make money and, do all the official things. So, um, that's sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying how thankful and grateful I am, to everyone who has supported me all through the years, and how long it has taken to get to this point. Um, Bronwyn says YouTube is much better than television. I agree. Because I can choose. I think like YouTube is a much more active experience than watching TV. TV is very passive because you just sit down and you switch it on and it will just play constantly if you let it. Whereas YouTube, I have autoplay switched off on everything, which is another good way to avoid spending hours on things. But yeah, you kind of, it's a little bit more engaging, and you generally choose what you're going to watch next. Like, it's an active thing. So yeah, I prefer YouTube also, but Natasha says, my parents always say that your employer can always replace you, your family can't. So spend your time wisely. Absolutely. There are people in my life as well who, work a lot. And I always say to them, you don't need to be working that hard. And they always say, oh, but, I'm the only person who can do this job and everyone relies on me and stuff. And I say, listen, if you go out sick or something terrible happens to you and you're not around, that company will still survive. They will find someone to replace you very quickly. You're not irreplaceable. So yeah, but like you said, your family can't. Yeah, you're not going to. There's not going to be a situation where, like, you're. It's like one of the. Have you read that book? I haven't read it yet, but The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And one of the biggest ones was that they spent so much time working and not enough time with their family. You're never going to get to the end of your life or get to a stage where you think, like, I should have worked more. I should have spent less time with my family, unless you have a very toxic family. But I think generally time with your loved ones is the time that you're not going to get back. Whereas work, like I said, work is just always going to be there. It's always going to be expecting more and more from you. And no matter how much you give it will never be enough. Whereas just your presence with your family and just being there, that is usually more than enough. So yeah. Hello everyone. Hi. Ebony says, I just went from part-time to full-time. Now I need to figure out how to fit in the gym, cooking dinner, cleaning, etc. This is perfect timing. And you will do it. When I worked 7 days, and then when I stopped working 7 days and actually had a day off, I went from like 7 to 6. For the longest time, I was like, what do people do with all of this free time? Like, for the longest time, I just could not understand because I had just got into the practice and the routine of getting everything done. So yeah, you'll work it out. Trust me, it will all just slot into place. Let me see. Kitten Courageous, for the first time, I hadn't felt guilty about not having a full schedule. Now I don't know if I could ever go back to that. Really enjoy your work. First of all, thank you. And yeah, I think we get so caught up. Like I said, it becomes our default, and that just becomes what we know, and we don't tend to question that. And then this pandemic has changed so many people's situations. And I do have a video coming up on that as well, actually. I think it's not for a few weeks. I think it's in about 4 weeks' time, of kind of like lessons that we learned from the pandemic that we should carry forward with us into like the rest of our lives, basically. Yeah, I think it has a lot of people like rejigging things and questioning things. So I think I'm nearly at the end now for comments and questions. Let me see, I think so. I think I've caught up. Let me just go quickly flick back through a few. I'm sorry if I missed your comment or question. The chat moves so fast, and I'm on Instagram and YouTube. So Ballerina says, I love that story. It really rung true to me. That's about the fisherman. Yeah, why would you work hard just to get back to where you started? That never made sense to me. Ali says, so true. Time is the only irreplaceable currency. Yeah, you're just not getting it back. You're not. That's so make sure that you're doing something that you actually enjoy doing. At least 7 days, no day off. My full-time jobs were 5 days. Yeah, I worked two jobs. That's why I worked full-time during the week and then I worked part-time jobs as well. That's why 7 days. And then there were times, when I was in college during the week and then worked weekends. So yeah, there was a long time there where I worked 7 days. And like I said, I was totally fine. Like it didn't bother me. There were some times when, I'd had a particularly busy week or something when I felt, particularly tired, but I never burnt out. Because I was, I guess, very careful to actually take my breaks and fully rest when I needed to. Um, so I really hope this was helpful to anyone who's kind of finding that their work-life balance is totally all over the place, or they're trying to like rebalance things. Just know that there will always be that give and take. Like just because you're particularly busy in one part of your life does not mean that you have an unbalanced life or that you need to like work hard to get everything up to the same level. As long as it all balances out over time, I think that is that's the most important thing. It's about overall balance, not balance on like a day-to-day basis, but overall in your life. Is there balance? Is there give and take? Um, so thank you very much for being here. I hope that was helpful. I always hope all my content is helpful, but I try and keep it like practical and show like examples, particularly from my own life. So I hope you all have a great week. I will be back live streaming on Instagram on Wednesday, and I will speak to you all then. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Bye. See you. Bye.